when we tap into the Akasha, you see in the social media meme a very, very passive interaction with the Akasha. But what we really want is actionable intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
We really want to know how we can use this information to create in accordance with my vision of joy. And if I don't have a vision, that's where I get stuck. And that's where many, many people get stuck. I don't have the answer to the fundamental question, what do I want to do? And so I can't really make sense of the other information. So the basic premise of Tantra, of yoga, is of this original, unbounded, infinite, unimaginable light source that invested itself knowingly, willfully, with a great desire to express, and emanated into a force, the energy, that evolved into this human condition that we're all experiencing today over a gajillion years. That force is Akasha. Akasha is a Sanskrit word. It means space or sky. Mm-hmm. That is Akasha. And how the occultists, the intelligentsia of the occult renaissance, how they created a construct called the Akashic Record based on this idea that force is everything and everywhere and holding everything together and flowing through us and is imprinted on us, and hence is in all 10 directions and in all 3 worlds, past, present, and future. It's everything and everywhere. And we are not never tapped into the Akasha. We are always tapped into the Akasha. But these impressions of our current life that hide and veil the recognition of our essential natures, the recognition of what we are and where we came from, stops us from reading clearly and seeing clearly all the record. And as silent as we get, when we jump into the void and everything is silent, all of the mind noise is turned off and everything has been burned away, suddenly we are there again in our essential nature and touching everything, and every bit of knowledge is there available for us, whatever we would like to see. And so a big question becomes, what do I want to see? What do I need to know in order to create my life of joy now here in the 3D reality? Because this is where this is where I am, and this is where I live. And so we come to the tarot cards, which were created again by the intelligentsia of the occult renaissance as a 78 card pictorial representation of the entirety of consciousness, of the entirety of force, a map to read the Akasha dimensions. And it was purported to be a really, really good tool of self-discovery. And I think most people are familiar with this term with an image in mind of a metaphorical hall of records that we can access to glean a variety of information such as past lives or this and that. We are all just aspects of the one source that created us. Call that source nature, call that source God. And the 78 pictorial representations of this creation are used in order to examine this human condition in detail. That being said, this is the basic premise of why the tarot cards were created in the first place. They did become a card game very soon in that 15th century, 16th century going forward. They did become a tool of fortune telling, looking into the circumstance and the environment and that which is closest to me, because that's what human beings are most often concerned with, that which is most close to me. And so we can use the tarot cards to divine my path forward and to examine and analyze my path forward. But the classical tradition was using these cards as a means of self-development, as a means of tapping into this Akasha, this force, this source, this source of everything. And hence, they are a very, very powerful tool of discovery and self-examination. The tree of life is a construct of the Hebrew mystical system called Kabbalah. And the Kabbalah begins in the head, in the crown chakra, where source of light first evolves, first emanates, first becomes, and travels down the body into perfect physical manifestation in what we call the 10th sphere, the kingdom. Here we are in the kingdom where all of the elements have converged. The earth, the air, the wind, the fire, and the spirit, boom, is all here now in physical manifestation, here in my body. So the map shows a process of evolution in two directions. One, from original source into manifestation, and two, the spiritual aspirant's journey back towards the proverbial home, back towards realization, self-realization, God consciousness. So when you see a tarot card faced in the upward direction, we're talking about this spiritual evolution upwards.
Okay.
And when you see it downwards, you're talking about the spiritual evolution into creation.
Into the person, yep.
So there's no negative and positive, but as you've come to understand through the creation of karma, there is a positive creation of karma and there is a negative creation of karma. And we create, any way we create through this conversation, we create in every waking moment. And so again, the question becomes, what do I want to create? How do I want to create? Because I am going to be creating, and I will be creating through the various dimensions of my consciousness. I will be creating mentally, emotionally, physically, intentionally, determinedly, many different ways I'm entering my creation, many different ways I'm approaching the evolution of my spirit back to perfect recognition as well. The tarot cards, 78 cards, Ace through 10 is talking about these spheres. Ace, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And the trump cards, cards like the Fool, the Devil, the Moon, are talking about these paths between the spheres, approaches to various intelligences within this map of consciousness. This is what we call them, intelligences, not spirits, but intelligences, because, and that's where the word intelligent design comes from. One great intelligent design. So yes, I can't argue with that theory. It is a very, very intelligent design. But the tarot cards show you, for instance, if we are engaged in shadow work, then we might find the path of the moon showing us how we are approaching our subconscious world. We might find the path of the universe or the path of the moon taking us into a dimension of emotion or into the astral world, the foundation of the higher spiritual realms. Because that's what happens when you open a channel between surface conscious and subconscious. You are either going to first approach the dream world, or you're going to become quite wrapped up in emotions, because the subconscious serves information as imagery, not as lucid sentences. And when we come into contact with this imagery, our first reaction is a visceral response, is an emotional. And so that's why the path of the moon shows you on an approach into emotional activity, and the path of the universe shows you on an approach into the subconscious, into the astral world. And that's how the tarot cards speak to you, as approaches into dimensional consciousness. And I often see when I go live that people asking yes and no questions to the tarot cards. Will this happen at such and such a date? Or am I on the right path? Yes and no. And as you've all seen, none of these tarot cards have yes or no printed on them in any way, shape, or form. So how do you read a tarot card for a yes or no question? It's really difficult. And at any stage of the game, any stage of the reading, you'll have to invoke your intuitive faculties. You'll have to invoke all of the faculties with which we are invested, our emotional, our imaginative, our intellectual, and our physical too. And that's how the cards are broken into the various dimensions, the various suits. And we'll look at that going forward too. But basically, what kind of question we want to be asking the tarot cards is a question which will deliver an answer that is going to empower me. That's what the tarot cards are for. They're tools of empowerment, not tools to lose yourself in various circular intellectual exercises, but a tool that is going to actually give me power for what? For creating my destiny. Now, that's a pretty huge question or a huge statement. That is the one freedom that I, as a human being, am invested with. The power to create my path forward, the power to choose. I have this freedom of movement, freedom of thought, freedom of imagination, freedom of vision to go forward and create myself against any model that I see myself wanting to create my path, create my future. And that's what the tarot cards are best used for, empowerment tools. So we know, and the tarot cards are there to support what we already know. Again, I have to take us back to the original premise. We've all come from the same source. And the only thing that hides our recognition of our essential nature, and the only thing that stops us from tapping into the source of all wisdom, all knowledge, is all of the impressions of our current life, all of our cultural impressions, all of our values, all of the education that has made us self-identify with a particular pattern. It stops us from really seeing the true answers sometimes. Whether we are male or female, we are all invested with the very same capacities, the very same limitations, the very same needs, the very same desires. The human condition does not change from person to person. Hence, if you can read yourself, you can read somebody else. Hence, the basis of all of the wisdom traditions are know thyself. If you know yourself, that's what they say. The Greeks said this, you know all of the gods in the universe, because we are all from the same source, and the Akasha flows through us. Everybody that engages with the tarot cards, everybody that engages willfully with the Akasha is said to want to recognize, want to be of my essence, want to reunite something that is misunderstandedly not united right now. Actually, it is united, but something gets busy and says otherwise. And that's how we use the tarot cards.